Stephen A. does chemistry of Max Kellerman, quote, more his fault than mine. I can't debate myself. Okay. Max was a fine debater. There was nothing wrong with Max's debate skills. You know what Max's problem was? He wasn't Stephen A. He wasn't sitting there saying, "Oh, you don't know nothing. My name's Stephen A. Smith. I play brick on General Hospital." Max was always very calm and very serene when he debated Stephen A. And he used like different. Max was just a smart guy, so he used like physicists and scientists and references from books. He was very cerebral. He was very Ivy League when he was debating Stephen A. And I think that kind of shook Stephen A. as like, I have no idea where this dude is coming from. But if you really paid attention, it all made sense at the end. But Stephen A. just couldn't hack it. Not to say that Stephen A.'s not smart. He's a smart guy. But Max was he was like a cerebral assassin, right? He was able to pick apart Stephen A.'s debates by just using different words and different phrasing and different ways of just cutting down his subject's fight. And I don't think Stephen A. could just wrap his head around that. The crazy thing is when they got rid of Max, the show was still number one. See, this is where ESPN got it wrong. I do blame them for putting Max on First Take. Not to say he didn't belong there. But the problem was Max was perfect with Marcellus Wiley on ESPN Radio LA with the Max and Marcellus show. They had a great show. And when they split them up, when they say, "Oh, Max is going to go over the First Take, he's going to move across country to go to First Take," I say, man, that's a mistake. You had a perfect show right there. Find somebody else with Stephen A. Because Max and Marcellus, they were just a great compliment for each other. And what ESPN should have done is what they did with Dan Le Batard when he was there. Because he was out of Miami. So the first hour of Dan's show was about Miami sports. So that was on ESPN. And then they went into the last 2 or 3 hours and it was all about national sports. And they should have done the same thing with Max and Marcellus. The first hour, if it was a 3-hour show, the first hour should have been about LA sports. And then the next 2 would be national. And they would broadcast that on ESPN. They could have aired that after First Take. They could have aired that after or maybe on ESPN2 or ESPN News. Or if it had a 4-hour show, maybe the first hour was LA and the last hour was LA and those 2 hours in between were national. And it would have worked. It would have worked, but they didn't. They broke those 2 guys up. Eventually, Marcellus left. I don't think he stopped doing a radio show, but he was still on ESPN. Then he went off to Fox Sports, and they put him with Acho, and that was a nightmare. Because Acho's like Stephen A. He's just an egotistical dude, thinks he's great. He's really not. But that's a whole different show. But yeah, but Max, there was nothing wrong with Max at all. Max was great. The show was still number one if Max was there. So I don't know what Stephen A. is talking about. The problem with Stephen A. is there's only been 2 guys that I don't think he really had a hard time debating. Max was one, and 2 was Skip Bayless. One, because him and Skip, basically when he was arguing with Skip, he was arguing with himself. They were both sports reporters. They both did their research. They both had takes sometimes where you scratched your head, and they both yelled at each other. They both were very blustery. So Stephen A. was always, debating against himself. And Skip too. I think Skip, as much as he liked Shannon, I think he also missed Stephen A. And then another thing was when it comes to Stephen A. and Skip, like Skip saved his life. Like young Stephen A., the quite frankly Stephen A., during the Allen Iverson era when he was on ESPN. I like quite frankly. It was a good show. But Stephen A.'s ego, you think Stephen A.'s ego is big now. Think about it like 20 years ago. And ESPN was like, nah, you're not that, you're not that great. Bye. And they got rid of Stephen A. And then Stephen A. was just bouncing along. He was on CNN a little bit. He was on Fox Sports a little bit, but nobody wanted to really hire him full time. And then during this time, Skip Bayless took over First Take. It was Cold Pizza. He took over First Take. It was like him and Woody used to argue, and then Woody went off to another ESPN show, and Skip needed a new co-host, and he thought of Steven because him and Steven still kept in contact with each other. So I think Skip was trying to still bring him back, but ESPN kept on saying, no, he sucks. We don't like him. But Skip, he brought in Stephen A. just as a guest host. And it went from 1 day to 2 days, and the ratings were great. And then Stephen A. became Skip's partner on First Take. And then Skip left, the Fox Sports. It started Undisputed with Shannon Sharp, and Stephen A. took over First Take, and it's still been number one. But I think there's always something in Stephen A.'s mind that if it wasn't for Skip Bayless, we wouldn't be seeing Stephen A. Smith right now. Skip saved his life. ESPN did not want him. But the humble side of Stephen A. just doesn't exist because he still feels like I'm ESPN. And it's like, yeah, they're paying you like that. But one day they might say like, we took a Q score and we found out that Shannon Sharp is actually more popular than Stephen A. Well, the next time Stephen A's contract comes up, we just give it to Stephen. Kind of work around Shannon's schedule, put him in charge of First Take, and bring on Ocho Cinco because they have a great chemistry on Nightcap. If you watched Nightcap with Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco on YouTube, please do. It's very entertaining. And I bet you if you ask Shannon what show does he love more, First Take or Nightcap, he'll probably say Nightcap. He won't say it, but I believe it's Nightcap because it's just looser and they have a lot more fun. You don't have to worry about censors. The funny thing again about Max, going back to Max for a second, Max had the streets. Like Max was one of those dudes, like he stood up more for black causes than Stephen A. Smith. And then Stephen A's like, oh, that's not true. Like I always stand up for black people. It's like, yeah, you do at times. But Max was always down. Like he was always down, like with spitting out facts, like Black history facts, civil rights facts. Like Max knew his stuff. And I think a lot of dudes in the barbershops understood, like Max is pretty down. Like, he understands the struggles brothers go through. He gets it. I think that's another thing that probably irked Stephen A. too, that Max had the streets and Stephen A. didn't. And Stephen A. still doesn't have the streets. He does not. And I think maybe that's why they got Shannon. I don't know. But this whole comment that Stephen says, I can't debate myself and the chemistry is more his fault than mine. It's like, Max seems like he's a very easygoing guy. Marcellus Wiley has never said anything bad about Max Kellerman. He loves Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman is his boy. And to be honest, I never heard anybody say anything bad about Max. Stephen A. Smith is the only person I heard say anything bad about Max Kellerman. So if there was a chemistry issue, why didn't you work on it? Why didn't you say, hey, Max, listen. And maybe they did, I don't know, but maybe say, hey, let's work on some stuff here because I'm trying to catch a rhythm with you and I can't quite get it. Let's just talk to each other, work with each other over the weekend or something, over a couple of weekends and figure some stuff out. I don't think Stephen A. is that guy. Stephen A. is about Stephen A. Stephen A. is all about his feelings. And if his feelings are hurt for any reason, he lashes out. Max seems like he's a good dude. So no, Stephen A. It's not Max's fault. It's your fault. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to debate yourself. Now, here's the thing. I think Shannon is fine. Like, I think Shannon and Stephen A. is fine. I think Shannon loves his schedule. He still gets to do Club Shay Shay, and he still gets to do Nightcap. And he only has to be on First Take 2 times a week, maybe 3 if there's something special. So I think he's fine. And I think he generally likes Stephen. But I'm telling you, but if he had to debate Stephen every day, I think Shannon would get tired of Stephen A. Stephen A. is a lot. Maybe not as much as Skip. Skip is highly frustrating. But Stephen A. can be frustrating too. And even with Shannon, if Shannon was on every day, I could see him after a while saying like, you know what? I'm bowing out. I'm just going to focus on my podcast. I'm going to focus more on Club Shay Shay and Nightcap. I could see him bowing out if he was up against Stephen A. every day. But given that it's only 2 days a week, it's going to work. It's going to work. But I don't know. Stephen A. seems like he's a hard dude to handle. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's just a lot.